Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki. Here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. Sensex and Nifty end a range-bound session with minor gains. Nifty reclaims the 25,000 mark. Auto and IT stocks are the top gainers. US President Donald Trump pushes back his 50% tariff deadline for the European Union by over a month till the 9th of July. The de-escalation comes after a call with the European Commission President. Global markets inch higher. President Trump says Russia's Putin has gone absolutely crazy and hints at possible new sanctions. This after Ukraine's Zelensky questioned America's silence on the Russian air raids targeting Ukrainian cities. Trump also slams Zelensky, says he's doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Relief for JSW Steel over its acquisition of bankrupt Bhushan Steel. Supreme Court orders status quo on liquidation proceedings. JSW and lenders confirm that review petitions will be filed. JSW management is upbeat on getting a refund if Bhushan Steel goes into liquidation. Relief for Spicejet in its arbitral dispute with former promoter Kalanidhi Maran. Delhi High Court rejects Maran's claims of 1,300 crore rupees in damages, calls it a case of deliberate and willful concealment of facts. Maran has the option of challenging the order in the apex court. The Supreme Court questions Maharashtra government's decision to disqualify L&T from the tender process of two projects worth 14,000 crore rupees, says it's difficult to believe that the company that built Central Vista in New Delhi did not qualify, seeks the state government's response by Thursday. The new invoice management system under GST irks India Inc. Sources say industry has told the government the new system is causing additional compliance burden. Kerala government issues a warning to coastal areas after containers from a capsized ship carrying oil and hazardous chemicals wash ashore. State government tells the public to stay away from the beached containers. Heavy rains lash Mumbai, disrupting road and rail traffic as the monsoon arrives early. An underground metro station, which recently opened in Worli, has been flooded. All right, let's start with the day's market action. The Indian market ended with minor gains in a range-bound session. Nifty ended above the 25,000 mark. Market with the auto and IT stocks as the top gainers. Mid-cap index outperformed. US President Donald Trump has extended his 50% tariff deadline for the European Union from the 1st of June to the 9th of July. The de-escalation comes after the European Commission President asked for more time to reach an agreement. The EU chief has said the bloc is ready to advance talks swiftly and decisively. Staying with international news, the EU has begun to court Vietnam to strengthen trade ties with the export-dependent nation. This comes soon after Chinese President Xi Jinping's bid to attract business from the nation that is grappling with threats of crippling US tariffs. French President Emmanuel Macron's first visit saw France and Vietnam signed a deal on Monday for 20 Airbus. Now, deal signed during Macron's visit also covered cooperation on nuclear energy, railways and satellites. Vietnamese President Luong Quoc said that the countries pledged to work closely to maintain and strengthen free trade. Oil prices surged in early Asian trade after US President Donald Trump extended the deadline for a trade deal with the European Union. The move eased concerns over tariffs hurting global demand. Meanwhile, gold prices fell marginally, giving back some of the last week's gains. Right, in what comes as a big relief for JSW Steel, the Supreme Court has ordered a status quo on the liquidation proceedings of Bhushan Power and Steel. Now, the apex court has allowed JSW Steel and its committee of creditors to file review petitions in the case, saying that the time period for review isn't over yet. Ashmit Kumar is here with the details. Ashmit, please take us through the apex court's order.
Well, what we understand is that clearly there's a big relief that's come as far as JSW Steel is concerned. What we're given to understand is that the Supreme Court, in very clear terms, has directed for a sense of status quo, no liquidation as far as Bhushan Power and Steel is concerned. That's the core concern that had been raised by the COC, that had been raised by JSW Steel. Now, bear in mind that former promoter Sanjay Singhal had moved the NCLT and had sought for an expeditious liquidation of Bhushan Power and Steel. Now, what JSW Steel, as well as the COC, when appearing before the the Supreme Court told the highest court is that, look, there is still some time left as far as filing of the review is concerned, that if liquidation takes place, that will leave JSW, that will leave the COC high and dry, that the COC themselves are facing questions of how this return, if the Supreme Court order is to be complied with, how the return of funds is to work, how the return of securities from JSW back to the lenders will work, what legal options there are before the lenders, before the JSW. And these were questions basis which the Supreme Court said that in the interest of justice, it's best advised that at this point status quo is maintained. There is no further movement, there is no liquidation that takes place, and that is the best way to ensure that if and when the review is filed, there will not be any further liquidation. Having said that, speaking of a review, the Supreme Court as a part of its order does record indicating that both JSW Steel as well as the COC are contemplating relief measures like filing of a review petition. Just a small caveat there. As per the Supreme Court rules, there's a 30-day window for filing of review petitions. Given that this judgment came on 2nd of May, 2nd of June naturally would translate into a deadline, a 30-day deadline. So that's the window that JSW Steel and the lenders are looking at in terms of filing of a review petition. But for now, status quo, no liquidation to happen as far as Bhushan Power and Steel is concerned.
Right, thank you, Ashmit, for that. JSW Steel's joint MD and CEO Jayant Acharya had said that the company has strong grounds to avail all legal remedies with respect to Bhushan Power. Speaking with CNBC-TV18, he also said that JSW Steel expects to receive refunds from Bhushan Power if it's headed for liquidation.
I think those are under various stages of discussions with our advisors, and we'll be taking appropriate steps at the right time. I may not be able to give you exactly what the status is in the code as of today. Yeah, so two things. On the downside, as per the Supreme Court judgment as well, we are protected from the fact that the refund would come back to us, number one. Number two, the capacity expansions in BPSL have been done from the internal accruals which we generated at BPSL as per the resolution plan.
Right, Ashmit, let's also talk about Spicejet, whose shares rose in trade after the Delhi High Court dismissed Kalanidhi Maran's plea seeking damages of more than 1,300 crore rupees from the airline. Could you take us through what the court said and what does this mean for Kalanidhi Maran?
Well, big reprieve coming in for Spicejet, the airline. The Delhi High Court on Friday, we understand, has rejected an application by Kalanidhi Maran seeking damages of 1,300 crore rupees. Now, bear in mind, this goes back nearly a decade and a half. 2010 is when Kalanidhi Maran had acquired a controlling stake as far as Spicejet as the airline is concerned. In 2015, handed the control back to Ajay Singh, and since then, there's been a dispute over a transfer of preference shares, a transfer of warrants, a transfer of cash. There's been an arbitral dispute. Now, the arbitral dispute first went in favor of Kalanidhi Maran. The arbitral tribunal had directed for payment of 579 crore rupees from Spicejet to Kalanidhi Maran. However, after a spate of litigation in 2024, which is just last year, the Supreme Court had sent the matter back into arbitration. And at the arbitration center is when Kalanidhi Maran had raised claims of 1,300 crore rupees. The arbitral tribunal rejected it. Kalanidhi Maran then moved to the Delhi High Court. The Delhi High Court, we now understand, has also rejected it. In fact, the Delhi High Court used strong language that this was, quote-unquote, a calculated gamble being used by Kalanidhi Maran in terms of way they've gone about filing this entire petition, challenging the arbitral award, and also going on to say that certain key facts were in fact held from the Delhi High Court. The Delhi High Court saying we're not impressed with this conduct. So on that ground, sending it aside, dismissing this petition. But bear in mind that Kalanidhi Maran does have the legal remedy, the legal option of appealing this Delhi High Court judgment before the Supreme Court.
Right, thank you, Ashmit, for that. The Supreme Court has questioned Maharashtra government's decision to disqualify L&T from the tender process of two projects. The road projects are worth 14,000 crore rupees. The apex court said it's difficult to believe that the company that built Central Vista in New Delhi did not qualify. It also sought the state government's response by Thursday. All right, moving on. JSW Paints is likely to take over AkzoNobel's India business. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that JSW Paints will buy out AkzoNobel's promoter stake of 75% for 10,000 crore rupees. Rachna Dhanrajani joins us with more. Rachna, take us through the contours of the deal.
Right, the battle for AkzoNobel India is heating up and JSW Paints may hold the edge. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that JSW Paints is set to acquire 74.76% stake in AkzoNobel India in a deal that valued around 10,000 crore rupees. The deal is expected to be completed by the end of June. This would mark the complete exit of AkzoNobel's Dutch parent from the Indian market. But that's not all. The deal is also being struck at a discount. AkzoNobel India's current market capitalization is at about 16,000 crore rupees. But the deal values the company at about 13,000 crore rupees. Now, Indigo Paints and Berger Paints had also thrown their hats into the ring to buy AkzoNobel's asset, but JSW has emerged as the front runner. CNBC-TV18 had first reported in January that these three companies will battle it out for AkzoNobel's India assets. Earlier this year, Parth Jindal spoke to CNBC-TV18's Shireen Bhan, where he promised to give everything to seal this deal. Let's take a look.
I think there's no choice. If JSW and the ambitions we've shown that we want to be a top 3 player in whichever sector we play in, if I have to do that, then I have to give it everything that I've got for Akzo.
How will you fund it?
It's going to be a mix of the family investing, and private equity.
The 3,500 crore rupees IPOs of Schloss Bangalore, the owner of luxury hotel chain, the Leela, saw a tepid response on the first day. As of 4 p.m., the company's overall issue was subscribed 6%. The portion allocated for retail investors was booked 18%. The portion for qualified institutional buyers was subscribed 3%. Storage solutions provider Aegis Vopak's initial public offering opened for subscription today. 25% of the public issue had been subscribed so far, with the retail portion booked 18%. Meanwhile, qualified institutional buyers have subscribed 39% of the portion allocated to them. The price band of the 2,800 crore rupee issue has been set at 223 to 235 rupees a share. Investors can bid for a minimum of 63 shares. The new invoice management system under GST has irked India Inc. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that industry has flagged its concerns about additional compliance burden to the government. Now, Timsy Jaipuria is here with more. Timsy, tell us about the industry's concerns.
Well, that's right. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the new invoice management system, or the IMS, under the GST regime is causing additional compliance burden for the taxpayers. Industry, in a detailed representation, has mentioned that the new system design assumes auto-replication, reconciliation of transactions across GSTR forms, and considering that most companies' processes are through manual operations, the new system would not just mean additional infrastructure, a minimum requirement of a qualified CA, a 24-hour software and internet connection, and basic backbone, that is the IT backbone, which will be required, adding to the burden. Also, the representations outline that most companies use basic accounting software that don't allow auto-matching of sales, purchases, ITC transactions across GSTR forms. And as per the new invoice management system and the design, if it sees any mismatch or break in the transactions in the GSTR forms, it will raise a red flag, which will alert the GST and income tax authorities for action, and it could lead to companies and taxpayers getting not just a GST but income tax notice as well. That is for the transaction reconciliation mismatch due to the new invoice management system and design. Further discrepancies have been flagged by the industry due to the new IMS design system, which says that it compresses correction window, blocks ITC credit, and thus problems arising due to the new IMS design are adding to compliance burden, hitting working capital, along with the most harming impact, which is that the assumptions that will be made by the authorities during these mismatches, which will be noted, and it increases the risk of dual taxation. Now to be seen is how the government and the industry battle this out.
Right, thank you, Timsy, for that. India is on track to overtake Japan to become the 4th largest economy by 2025. However, according to the International Monetary Fund, the numbers indicate that while India is very close to Japan in nominal GDP, as of 2024, it is still slightly behind as per IMF's current estimates. Ritu Singh joins us now with the details. Ritu, take us through IMF's data.
Well, the big question, has India really become the world's fourth largest economy? Because, on Saturday, we had the CEO of Nifty making a statement that quickly drew a lot of attention, saying that India had overtaken Japan to become the fourth largest economy with a $4 trillion GDP, citing IMF data. So we decided to take a closer look at the numbers. And as per IMF's projection, India is indeed set to overtake Japan later this year, but it has not happened just yet. Now, as per the most recent official figures, and that is for 2024, India's economy stood at $3.91 trillion, while Japan was still slightly ahead at $4.03 trillion, and that makes Japan the fourth largest economy in the world currently, but things are expected to change this year. IMF data shows that India's economy is projected to reach $4.187 trillion in this year, just ahead of Japan's $4.186 trillion, and that will make India the fourth largest economy. But beyond that as well, the gap is expected to grow, with India forecast to hit $4.6 trillion in 2026 compared to Japan's $4.3 trillion. Of course, keep in mind, these are still projections and they're based on various assumptions, and things can always change. Also keep in mind, RBI has projected India's growth rate at 6.5% for FY26, while the IMF's forecast is slightly more conservative at 6.2% in FY26 and 6.3% in the next fiscal. Still, what is clear is the overall trend that India continues to be one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. In fact, by 2028, IMF expects India to even overtake Germany, becoming the third largest economy in the world, only behind the US and China. So while India isn't the fourth largest economy just yet, it is right on the brink. And if IMF's projections do hold true, that milestone should be crossed within 2025.
All right. Thank you, Ritu, for that. On that note, we'll slip into a short break. But before that, we are excited to unveil a brand new global business news channel. CNBC-TV18 presents an all-new CNBC-TV18 Prime, bringing you insights from policymakers, business leaders and economists shaping both the world and India's future. CNBC-TV18 Prime decodes global shifts and their impact on Indian businesses, giving you unparalleled insights. So tune into CNBC-TV18 Prime at 12 noon for the Global Reset and at 8:30 p.m. for Global Lens. All right, time for a short break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. Containers from a capsized ship carrying oil and hazardous chemicals have washed ashore in Kerala's Kollam. The Kerala government has issued evacuation orders for parts of the district's coastal areas. The government has told the public to stay away from the beached containers. The cargo ship, which was on its way to Kochi, sank after encountering heavy weather. Heavy rainfall and thunderstorm battered Mumbai and neighbouring districts, marking the region's earliest monsoon onset in over 70 years. The Met Department has issued a red alert for Mumbai, Thane, Raigad and Ratnagiri, which will remain in place at least until tomorrow morning. Local train and metro services were disrupted. The newly inaugurated Acharya Atre Chowk metro station at Mumbai's Worli area has been waterlogged, and it was only 4 out of the 6 water pumps were operational there. Santiagora reports from the flooded metro station.
Once arrived in Mumbai on Monday, bringing heavy rains to the city. And let's talk about what's happening to Mumbai's much talked about Aqua Line, Mumbai's Metro Aqua Line. So let me tell you this, that when this line was promoted by the state government, it was claimed, the state government would claim that this line is completely flood-free. And let me now tell you what has happened now. With the post-span of crave itself, the line is disrupted. The trains are running only up to Worli station and not to the final stop of Acharya Atre Chowk at Worli Naka. Why? Because there is flooding as the Acharya Atre Chowk. Right now, I am at the Worli station. So trains are running up to here, but let me still show you how the Worli station are still looking like. This how the station of a metro line which was supposed to be to. This had raised serious concern about the reliability for Mumbai Metro and commuting by Mumbai Metro
during these.
All right, the Indian government is working on a new policy to support small hydroelectric power projects in the country. According to sources, the draft policy largely focuses on feasibility, finance, storage and distribution of these projects. Abhimanyu joins us now. Abhimanyu, what are you picking up from your sources?
A new policy for small hydel projects is being prepared by the Union government. The Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has already held several review meetings, and the draft policy is going to be tabled before the Union Cabinet for due approval. Now, currently, there is no policy which exists from the Union government side for small hydel projects. That is, the projects which are lower than 25 megawatts in capacity. Higher projects in terms of megawatts are handled by the Ministry of Power, and an assessment which had been conducted by the government had earlier indicated that there are over 7,000 sites for small hydel projects across India, and these potential sites have a potential of 21 gigawatts of hydel power which can be generated. It remains to be seen how early this policy is going to be decided and finalized, since it's going to act as a guiding light. It's going to decide the contours for financing, storage, diversion of water, and also for preparation of such projects in far-flung areas. Also, this may aid several villages and hamlets which are located in far-flung areas and lack grid connectivity. And now, with suspension of the Indus Water Treaty, several areas in J&K, Himachal Pradesh and Punjab may also witness such small hydel projects coming up, which of course is going to add not just to the base load but will also reduce the dependence on thermal power.
Right, thank you, Abhimanyu, for that. In international news now, Israeli forces have bombed a school in Gaza, killing 36 people, including many children. Forces have also arrested at least 11 Palestinians during raids carried out by Israeli forces across the occupied West Bank. Now, in a post on X, the Israeli military said it intercepted a rocket launched from Gaza before it crossed into Israeli territory. US President Donald Trump has called Russian President crazy for launching one of the biggest airstrikes on Ukraine since the start of the war. Trump also warned Moscow that any attempt to take over Ukraine will lead to the downfall of Russia, warning further sanctions. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. More news and updates continue right here on CNBC-TV18.